You're welcome back. This is still Idea Money Digest, your number one breakfast show where we unpack stories shaping Nigeria, Africa, and all around the world. Earlier, we brought you stories about headlines making rounds today, but right now we're turning our attention into yet another issue that strikes the hearts of our economy, of industries, and most importantly, our daily lives as Nigerians. Today, we're asking the big question: is captive power Nigeria's really the answer for a failing grid? Now, yes, more context to it. According to the World Bank, Nigeria loses an estimate of 25 billion US dollars annually because of unreliable electricity, and millions of Nigeria remain unconnected to the grid. And our industries, from cement to bottling plants and many more, are increasingly generating their own power, sometimes producing more than what the national grid delivers. Think about it. Dangote alone generates more than 1,500 megawatts for its factory. Meanwhile, the entire national grid struggles to supply between 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts to the whole country. On this show today, we'll be driving deep into the gaps and see what exactly is causing this issue. So, our topic for discussion this morning is captive power and the future of Nigeria's electricity, the solution or stopgap. Joining us to break this down together this morning is Engineer Adebayo Olajide, a senior consultant at Energy Market and Rate Consultant. Good morning to you, Mr. Adebayo. Engineer Adebayo, sorry.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you. You're looking sharp. I love the native and also the cap.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into it really now. The World Bank estimates Nigeria's economy to lose like about 25 billion US dollars annually. As an expert in energy markets, what are the most significant and also tangible ways that we can prevent all of these losses, and how are we even making all of these losses? Because that's a lot of money that we need at the moment right now in our economy.
Okay. Good morning again.
Good morning.
For Nigeria business, the 25 billion that was estimated, what it means for a typical Nigerian business is the loss comes from that money you set aside to put in an alternative to the grid. Say you need an alternative power of 1 megawatt. Today, you will need about $1.5 million to put that for yourself. So that's a loss to your business. What that also means is that's costs that you have to set apart to maintain whatever alternative source that you've put in place. The foiling of that alternative source, the loss of production. There are some companies that cannot afford the power to go down for 1 second. The moment it goes down, all the batch of their production is going into waste. So this and many more are what that loss means for a Nigerian company. And how can we mitigate against that? Some companies are not waiting for the grid. Unfortunately, they're not waiting for the government to put what it requires in place as per the grid. They've gone into doing a captive power, which is 100% controllable by themselves and their personnel. So that way, they also try to cut short the further loss. So if you are not putting in a captive power today, it means that you'll be waiting on the grid, and there is also potential of production time loss, because if the grid should go down and you don't have an alternative power, you have to wait till the grid comes up. And also, even if you have an alternative power, due to the cost of running your alternative solution, you might actually cut down your production hour. If you have the power available for 24 hours, I can bet with you that a lot of companies will run 24 hours supply, 24 hours production today, but most of them does 12 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, just because they can't keep burning that diesel, keep burning that gas 24/7.
Okay. Yeah, I actually do understand that. Spending so much money on diesel and also PMS could be very expensive in some cases. But let's take a case study of Dangote, for example, who produces their own power, and sometimes some companies produce more or almost equivalent to national grid supplies. Is captive power a sign of a successful or a failing economy?
It's a two-edged sword. I won't say it's a sign of a successful economy, although it's a sign of a resilient business model, right? For a Dangote to be able to put up that quantum of power for himself, it means that his business is resilient, and his cash, his book can carry that level of cash to put in that capex. But on the part of the national grid is a sign of a failing national grid, right? Because nobody wants to opt for self-generation if the grid is sufficient or reliable. The grid remains the cheapest anywhere in the world. The grid remains the cheapest form of electricity. But in a case where what's supposed to be the cheapest starts costing you so much, then you have to find an alternative, which is what Dangote. I think Dangote is even 100% off grid, right? He generates 24/7 for himself just to ensure that his losses are predictable. That's another thing an investor want to do, to be able to project, okay, what kind of loss can even come? What can I do to mitigate against it? So if I can mitigate against power loss, why don't I just go captive power? But I won't say it's a solution. I think it's a stopgap, right? And it's not a sign that the economy is failing. A lot of improvement has come up on the grid. In 2024, the grid will consume about 40 terawatt hour of energy. That used to be some 20 something terawatt hour of energy before. I think in 2023 we did about 37 terawatt hour. So there has been an improvement. Are we where we're supposed to be? No. Are we making efforts to get to where we're supposed to be? Yes. So in as much as the grid is failing, I feel that the grid is getting healthier by the day. We used to have grid collapse every other month. But this year we've only had the grid disturbance once in the entire year. So those are good signs that are showing that we're on the path to having a resilient grid. But while we are getting there, companies cannot keep waiting or take up the loss. That's why they will keep putting in an alternative in form of captive power for themselves.
Okay. So when I think about electricity in Nigeria, it's more than just lights for me. It's more than just up NEPA. It's more like power is jobs to me. Power is
Absolutely.
about our economy as a whole. Power is survival and a whole lot of things. And a lot of people depend on it. So when we talk about self-generation, we talk about, captive well, how do they put it? The new
Captive
captive
power.
idea, the captive power idea. I There are a lot of questions that come to my mind. One, especially about inclusivity, especially because of the low income earners in Nigeria and average Nigerians. How are they going to survive it? First of all, because this is more like it's going to favor the big players. So I'm asking for sustainability's sake, because when we talk of sustainability, it's not just for one group of persons in the society to be comfortable, but we are talking about how everybody is going to be included in this and going to be comfortable. So let's talk about sustainable solution now. Do you think this is encourageable for sustainability in Nigeria, or it's more like a stop gap rather that distracts, those that distracts that bigger investment needed in the national grid?
Okay. I'm not sure the captive power is stopping investment on the national grid, right? A lot of investment is ongoing, especially at the transmission side. Um, Bulk of it is because the transmission, what is required to put an investment in the transmission is capital intensive. It's huge. So you hardly see businesses that want to put in their money in there to put in the required investment because it's just intensive. If your $1 million, if you put it on the grid today, you might not even see any significant improvement, right? Um, so when we talk about inclusivity, one of the ways that captive power, even though people are going off grid, but NEC published a net billing regulation for consultation. for stakeholder consultation a while ago. I think it's still on. And one of the gains of that net billing regulation will be excess that you're producing as a captive power owner. You can actually put it on the grid. So the masses or the low income earner are not going to be pushed out, right? But now that captive power can actually put its excess on the grid, we are about to unleash another form of power aside the traditional power plants that we have. So if today net billing becomes live, a company like Dangote, a company like Boa, and the big companies can actually put their excess to the grid. And by the time we aggregate this excess, it can be running into hundreds of megawatts. So I feel that there is still hope for the low income earner. Can a low income earner put a captive power for himself? No. But can a low income earner um, benefit from the captive power that is being put in there by big companies? Yes, there is future there. There is hope because net billing will ensure that that works and that happens. And another side to it is this, right? When the big power consumers leave the grid, it makes more power available to the low income earner, right? Just imagine if Dangote is taken from the grid today. We might not have up to 2,000 that
Enough.
will be left. That will be no, right? That will be left for the residential customer to take. So there is an upside to it. Is it the best? No, because electricity is a business of volume. The more you have power load connected to the grid, the cheaper it becomes. So if you have all these power plants, all these big companies that are putting in captive power for themselves, if you have them on the grid and the grid can sufficiently carry them, maybe our tariff will be lower, right?
So is this
Because
why they share
electricity
those band
consumption
A,
is so.
band B, band C? I hope it doesn't get to band Z.
I guess that's also on a lighter note. Let's look at it again from a different perspective. Solar is more or less like becoming is growing at the moment here in Nigeria. I mean, I traveled to Kano sometimes last week, and houses around, shops around were depending on solar instead of national grid. But even with that, we've seen that we haven't seen so much of rapid spread in some areas as regards adoption of solar as a primary source of captive power for both businesses and especially in household. Is it because solar installation is quite expensive in some parts of Nigeria, or what are those leading factors to things that are like that that's holding back solar from growing in household and also businesses?
All right. One major thing for solar adoption is you have to look at the irradiation. That's how much sunlight do you have. A Kano cannot be compared to a river state. A river state doesn't have rainy season. It's rain almost every time of the year. So in a place like River State, you need to put in there almost times two of what you put in Kano to be able
Okay.
to get the power you are getting in Kano. So the first angle to it is we don't have the irradiation the same way around the country. Another angle is the cost that you've mentioned. Another angle to it is also you need space. If you put in a 1 megawatt PV, solar PV today, you will need an approximately 1.5 hectares of land, right? Or hectares
Interesting.
of, let me say, rooftop, if you want to put a rooftop. So, how many of these industries or how many of these small businesses have that space to put the solar PV? So, all these are part of what is slowing down the adoption of solar power, solar energy, because, and then the technical expertise also is another thing. You need people that are really vast in not just installation, but also maintenance. And even you need energy audits. People there is a need for technical personnel to be able to audit efficiently the volume of power you will need or the quantum of energy you will need because that sizing is a thing. If your if your PV is not sized properly, your investment will just go down the drain. So all these are part of the roadblocks that is not allowing that rapid adoption of solar in Nigeria.
Okay, let's look at it because you earlier mentioned that the use of other sources like generators could be quite expensive. So for businesses that are considering transitioning from probably diesel generator or PMS generators to solar captive power, what are those key economic and also operational factors that they need to weigh before making such decision? Because it's actually a very big decision, especially in some businesses that depend solely on electricity.
So you'll have to look at your books first. So look at what it's costing you to the grid plus your diesel. What is it per kilowatt hour? If you have to put in a solar power plant today, upfront cost is huge. If you have a 500 kilowatt generator, for you to have that same 500 kilowatt output, you will not put in a 500 kilowatt PV, solar PV. You must put above 500 kilowatt solar PV, right? Because you must augment for the variability of the sun. And also you need to put in battery. So you must put in a battery that is sufficient to carry your load. So when you put all these costs together, you have to do your cost benefit analysis to be certain that if you transition to solar PV, you are saving costs and not you unnecessarily incurring more costs. Yeah, solar PV today, the maintenance cost is very little, very, very minimal compared to a diesel gen. A diesel gen, you have a running cost. That's your fuel costs. Every other time that your generator is on, you are burning some good money, right, in terms of fueling. But in solar, whenever the light is on, you are not burning fuel, right? It's just the sun that you need. But beyond the sun that you need also a backup that will stabilize what is coming from the solar, because every second you don't have the same output from your solar PV.
Okay.
So you need a backup to flatten that output to be
Okay.
sure that your load you don't experience issues with your load, because that variableness, that up and down that is happening, to put it in simpler terms, that up and down that is happening with the sun can actually damage your equipment. So in a bid to save costs, don't go and incur more
Don't
loss.
go and spend more at the end of the day.
Because
But I really want to pick your brain on
exactly.
this actually. Between the connecting to national grid and using solar, which is cheaper for a business?
Grid is cheaper.
Okay.
Is a is
Okay, no
is a
problem.
is a night is a case of night and day.
Okay, but it's not as reliable. That's the issue here, right?
That's is the reliability that is a problem. But when it comes to cost, grid is cheaper,
Okay.
very cheap. You don't need an upfront cost for your grid, or even if you need an upfront cost, maybe very very minimal, well, negligible anyway. Because if you have to put a transformer in there, maybe because of your power demand that you can't be on the public transformer, if you have to put a transformer for yourself, a 20 million naira will get you get that done, and
And
you'll
you're
now be
good.
paying after usage. Unlike the solar today, you have to go and look for good money to put in there and all that. Then when you spread the cost, at the end of the day, 5 years down the line, you might not have paid
Recovered it
an
from that.
utility for what you've used in putting your solar in place. And you also have to think about replacement of those solar parts. You replace your battery over time, you replace your inverter over time, you replace your PV over time. So all these costs will still come back, and you don't know what. We are hoping that the prices will nosedive with improved technology and all that. But for now, grid is way cheaper than a solar.
Okay, I kind of like that you have agreed that the grid is way cheaper, even if we know that we need to, hop into other alternative modes of power supply, which is very key at this point in time. And I've seen that some solar gadget inverters and whatnot are beginning to become a little affordable and accessible than
Yeah.
Than it
before.
used to be, yes.
But then let's touch on the regulatory side of things. I know that regulation has been a bottleneck. There's so many bottlenecks when it comes to regulations. And we've seen NEC, and you cited that or stated that earlier. We've seen NEC begin to all that. I think since 2023 they opened the space a little. Things have been a little tied up in power generation, but then we saw that NEC have opened that space a little by allowing states to transmit and distribute their own electricity to their in their states. But then there are still, downsides to these things. There's still a lot of bureaucratic processes. There's still a lot of, policy downturns. There's still a lot of problems in this area. So, now this question is to you and concerning guidelines for captive power generation. So, from your perspectives, are these regulations actually helping to grow self-generation, or are they slowing it down?
If you could just quickly answer this.
Did you get my
Okay.
question?
In my own, I get your question. In my own
Okay.
perspective, the captive generation guideline or regulation is actually helping the adoption, right?
Okay.
You don't need a permit until you want to put in there a 1 megawatt.
Okay.
And why you need a permit from 1 megawatt is just because at 1 megawatt, what you are putting in there can serve as a potential risk to the environment, right? So NEC want to be sure that while you are looking for solution for your problem, you are not creating another solution for some other persons, right? And even for the larger space, the environment. So I feel that the regulations are good. They are not the process of application is not a lot of work. They've these days NEC has adopted a very will I call it linearized process, just very smooth. As long as all that you are required to submit, once you make the right submission, you can be sure that within the time frame that is stipulated within the guideline or the regulation, your permit will come out. So it's not a roadblock. It's just to be sure that we are safe while you are finding your own solution. Everybody around you, even including yourself, you are safe. That's why all this regulation and permitting and all that has to be in place. We can't just allow everybody to do what they feel like doing, right? If you allow people to do that, then you open the space up for subjective reasoning and not regulated reasoning.
Well, I really think he has brought everything as
Exactly.
a holistic. We need a holistic approach to solving this issue of electricity. But then I just want to ask you on the final note that looking ahead, what is the ideal balance between a robust national grid and a decentralized captive power, from your perspective?
There is an handshake. Let me put it that way, and the handshake is the net billing regulation that is coming in. Captive power can keep doing their captive thing while we are strengthening the grid, right? And part of the good thing is that the captive power can also help further strengthen the grid. The net billing enables this. You can connect your captive power to the grid by exporting your excess to the grid. So we have an installed capacity of 13.6 gigawatts today, but we have the maximum we've done ever is 5.8 gigawatts. By the time we have captive power come on board, we might be pushing to 6,000, 7,000. So for me, I feel looking ahead, while we have this decentralized solution, just because of reliability, we can also maximize those decentralized solutions to strengthen the grid. So there is that handshake, and the handshake is the mini grid. Also, we have interconnected mini grid that's connecting to the grid. All these are just to ensure that the grid becomes more reliable. Decentralizing the grid is not a bad thing. Centralized grid is robust, is better, because at the end of the day, because the problem with captive power, right, is if there should be an issue with your power plant, your entire facility shuts down,
Shut down.
right?
Okay.
Exactly.
I would just want
it's
to
not the
also pick
same
your
with the
brain
grid.
yet again, quickly. So if I generate so much of power from my captive power grid,
Yeah.
can I sell back to the national grid?
Once the net billing regulation has been signed by NEC, you can sell back to the national grid.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Engineer Adebayo. It was really nice conversing
Thank you
with
for
you on
this.
this
Thank
particular
you.
topic. Thank you for breaking everything down to pieces for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot from our guest. He's brewing with a whole lot of knowledge,
Exactly.
wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So, dear viewers, where do you stand? It's now time to throw that question back to you. Where do you stand? Should Nigeria double down on captive power as the future, or should we still be pushing to fix the grid once and for all? Join the conversation online. We would love to hear your thoughts on this. You can also follow the discussion on our social media platforms at Idea Television across X, Facebook, and Instagram. And of course, go and watch the playback on YouTube. Use the hashtag Idea Morning Digest and let's hear your take. That's where we leave you for today on Idea Morning Digest. Thank you for spending your morning with us. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations that matter to you and I. Until then, I am Cynthia Basia and I've been with
Paul Oladipo. Have a productive day ahead. Thanks for joining.